is a rabid dog is on the island, or the hawk, which is the hawk came and whatever.
I liked the hawk.
Did you?
During all this time, were you going to school?
I was luckily never on a successful television series, and I mean that honestly. I was never plucked out of school for 3 years at a time.
Right.
I left for 3 months and then would have to readjust, but I always did have like a normal life, and then I would go off and have these adventures on whatever obscure TV movie I was hired to be in, and then I would go back to school.
Did your parents make you agree to maintain a certain average in order to continue working?
I had good grades, decent grades, so that was never an issue, but if I hadn't, they would have put a stop to Stanley Robinson, but quick.
Right. Did you attend college?
I didn't really. I have scraped and scrapped my version of an education myself, which I have loved, because I've studied with a lot of different kinds of teachers.
Tell us about that.
Well, I started with Lorene Tuttle. She was the reason I'm acting. I mean, she just welcomed me and was supportive, and so that's where that started. I studied with Francis Lederer for a little while, and then I stopped studying for a few years, and I was auditioning a lot as a teenager, and started to feel very, very, very frustrated. I had done a lot of television, and I couldn't get a part in a movie. I just couldn't. And I decided that I sort of couldn't stand it anymore, so I got into my dad's acting class and said, I'm going to act now, and no one can tell me I can't, because I'm in this class. So I did a scene every week. I just made a promise to myself that I would get up on that stage every week, and I would do Shakespeare one week. I just getting a job and being disappointed that it was taking me out of acting class.
When you were in New York as a youngster, did you ever work with the New York Shakespeare Festival?
I did.
What did you do?
I moved here when I was 20 because I thought I'm tired of auditioning for the same kinds of things in Los Angeles, and I want to work in the theater. So I started doing general auditions. And I did one public, and I don't know, they made some little note on a note card, and away it got filed, and then 10 years later or something, I auditioned for A.J. Antoon for Taming of the Shrew to play Bianca. Tracy Ullman and Morgan Freeman did it in the park, and I got the part.
I would like to talk to you about a picture I enjoyed for several reasons, and that picture is called Project X.
That's good.
What attracted you to this project? You had to learn to do something.
Well, mostly what attracted me is it was a big part in a movie, and I'd never had one. So that was the main attraction.
Okay, second.
But after that, working with Matthew, who I thought was magnificent. I'd seen him on the stage and in movies. And I got to learn sign language to talk to a chimpanzee.
I'd like to ask you about a very interesting and worthy film, and that is The Water Dance. How did that role come to you? Did you want that one a lot?
Oh, so badly.
Did you?
I read the script. I think it was on some list, like an AFI Best Unproduced Film. I think that's right. And my agent sent it to me, and I had never seen a movie structured like it. I loved the part. Neil Jimenez, who wrote it, and he and Michael Steinberg directed it together, were having a table reading of it and asked me to read a very small part as a nurse. And I said, okay. And then months later, they got the financing for it, and Eric Stoltz was going to be in it. And I came in, and they were sort of pretending that it was a meeting where we got to know each other. The truth was, everybody knew I was desperate to play it, and I think they were deciding if they wanted me. And they said, there's a new draft, why don't you read it? And they gave it to me. I went and sat in my car, and I called them an hour and a half later and said, I love it, and they gave me the part.
The film is accurate, authentic, and uncompromising. It doesn't cut any corners.
This is about 3 men who have lost the use of their legs and are in a rehab center, and I play a woman who's married and having an affair with Eric's character before it happens, and is then thrown into this new role she has with him.
One of the central subjects of the film, there's a lecture on it, and then your role illustrates it, is sex with a paraplegic person. That was a scene in which you were, as so many of our guests on this stage have been in films, naked.
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 Was that difficult for you or not? Some who have been here have thought it was absolutely inconsequential. Others have felt very troubled by it sometimes.
Inconsequential, I wouldn't say. I don't get to go in that category. I noticed that I was naked. it couldn't have been more exquisitely intimate. And so the intimacy and the poignancy of that experience was bigger than my fear about being naked, first of all. And second of all, I felt, the party line is, if it's important to the movie, well, it was really important to the movie. One of the few things this man has left is his ability to look at this woman's body. So, so it seemed right.
Was right. As I prepared for this film, I was struck again by the quality of the film and of the performance that you and Eric give. You were wonderful together.
You just hit me with this. You can't expect me to have an argument. Stay with him. He's your husband. Stay with him. You'll understand. I love you. I love you too.
Okay, we come with great pleasure to a truly remarkable television series called Mad About You. How was the series born?
Paul Reiser had done a lot of stand-up material about his life as a married man and his wife, and just found a lot of humor in that. I had known Paul a little bit. We had a mutual, like a friend of a friend, and I had done The Water Dance, and I had done Mr. Saturday Night. I had these 2 movies coming out, and everybody said they were going to be big, huge hits. Neither of them were. But I thought, well, the last thing I'm going to do is a sitcom. And he called me up and said, would you read this thing? And I to play my wife, and I was sure it was going to be a great part for him, and I would be the supportive wife. And I said, oh, I'll read it. And I finished it and said, I want to do that. It was just incredibly clear. I thought, I wonder if they know they've written this great, weird, complicated part for this woman. And he and I sat in a room together, also with Danny Jacobson, who was the executive producer of the show, and it was honestly like we had been married for 15 years. It was the strangest thing.
How involved were you with the evolution of that character? Was she there when you arrived, or did she evolve with you?
Both. I mean, what I read on the page excited me and interested me. She was the one who was anxious. She was the one who was kind of all over the place, and he was calming her down. That was rare.
Very rare.
Totally rare.
The man is usually the zany,
yes,
and the woman
she's
is
going,
the
honey.
support.
Right.
Mechanism.
Right. And the thing that interested me was that it was simple. Basically, what they were interested in pursuing is what I was interested in pursuing, which was what happens between these 2 people, how hard it is to love another person.
How much of Helen Hunt wound up in Jamie, would you guess?
A lot. Certainly a lot. This incredible process was just sort of born, which is that we would sit around a table and read the episode on a Monday, and we'd rehearse it a little bit, and then we'd sit around this round table, a handful of the writers and me and Paul, and go through it. And then on Tuesday we would rehearse, we would do a run through, and we'd sit there again and say, okay, all the scenes are working except this one, and these 25 different lines that each of us have marked need to be worked on. And we would do it every single day of the week.
When would you shoot?
Friday nights.
The famous Fridays in Los Angeles.
That's right. Everybody in town is shooting their sitcom.
Yeah. I have a geographical datum, which is the second of our wonderful coincidences.
I know what that is.
Well, you can see this one coming off Fifth Avenue. Where did the Buckmans live, please?
Across the street from here, right on Fifth Avenue and 12th Street.
And 12th Street. I'd like to know how come you and Paul Reiser worked that